Relationships between economic systems and intellectual property. Attention to economic systems is so crucial because though we in writing studies are in the knowledge-making business, our IP decisions are often governed by economic entities external to academia, including the entertainment and publishing industries. In this video, interview participants discuss relationships between economic systems and IP. They address the different direct and indirect costs of IP decisions. They also discuss multiple non-dominant approaches, including Native American and Latin America perspectives that exist within the prevailing Western capitalist approach that underlies current U.S. IP law. A full summary of the video is provided in the video summary section of the web text. The practitioners whose voices we share in this video suggest a number of options for having IP conversations about economic systems with students and colleagues. We summarize these in the pedagogical takeaways section.
When we think about intellectual property, it is certainly something that is important to the day-to-day workings of institutions and organizations and workplaces. It's kind of the basis of all of the capitalist societies that we work in. But all of that and those economies are also highly situated and contingent upon social hierarchies that leave a lot of people out, and that tend to ignore quite a few epistemologies for understanding knowledge, epistemologies for approaching knowledge making.
I think that when we need to teach our students that these things are really important, that citing the work of others is really critical, that acknowledging that ideas are important and matter, and really, in a sense, are intellectual property. I mean, they are intellectual property. You really have to be able to support those folks. So, I think students really need to understand that ideas aren't free. That they've been commodified in higher education for a long, long time, and that's certainly the case in popular media and all kinds of other formats or forums, rather. So I just talked to them about that whole notion of being ethical in their treatment of the ideas of others.
You know, the question. Well, we have brick and mortar buildings, and we teach all our classes in those buildings, and those buildings have a great deal of upkeep and costs for maintenance, and yet the university doesn't charge us an extra, they don't claim ownership of our work in our classrooms, of our teaching materials in our classrooms, in most universities, despite that overhead cost. And yet when we do distance education classes, they claim that maintaining servers and providing online support constitute additional support beyond what's normally provided by the university, and therefore they try to claim ownership of e-learning materials. And that irony is not that surprising when you consider that face-to-face classes aren't marketable except at the university, and that distance education classes have potential to be marketed beyond the university. And so the rules are explicitly created in order to create possibility of additional financial, streams.
Sure.
And so, I'll argue in this book, and I would say that most faculty need to understand that distance education shouldn't be perceived as something that's above and beyond the normal fare. In fact, ironically, faculty who come to teaching seldom, in our field they have training, but in most fields they seldom have any training whatsoever, right? You're a biologist, you take a lot of courses, you do a lot of research, and suddenly you find yourself in front of the classroom. You might have TA'd in a lab before, but you've never done a lecture, right? So what qualifies you to be a lecturer in front of a whole classroom? Well, you do it. Again, yet, when you create a course in a digital environment, which is just as new and just as different, they're going to require you to take a course, and by requiring you to take a course, they can take ownership of the material. So that's a conversation.
As students are a bit more progressed in their intellectual development, they can enter the conversation in deeper ways, or we can get at more of those like underlying economic assumptions and the ways that there's paradoxes and contradictions built into the systems in which we operate, and then start to maybe interrogate where there's different ethical hang-ups in the systems, like what can we see as problematic from different lenses, from different stances within these. If we look at one specific textual performance, what do we start to look at?
Let me throw something in there about textbooks, because it's been so interesting to me. I remember about, it must have been 6, 7, 8 years ago, maybe even longer, 10 years ago, people really started talking about open access textbooks in useful ways. And, we've had the Writing at CSU website, which has got lots and lots of content on it. Many people use it essentially as a textbook.
Right.
A less popular version of the Purdy OWL, but it's got some good content in it, and written by lots of good people, including some textbook authors. And for a while, people were saying, we just need to go with open access textbooks. It's going to reduce costs for students and all the rest of it. There's a part of me that kind of goes, yeah, if you want to reduce costs for students, we ought to be looking at support for tuition, because that's a lot bigger. Even at a school like Colorado State, where we've got roughly $7,800 tuition per year for full cost for in-state students, they're going to spend $1,000 or less on textbooks, I think. If you really want to save them money, you reduce the cost of tuition. But people really seize on the idea of open access textbooks being a great thing. And what really worries me about that is that in composition, you have to be really cautious about quality and new directions. And people were saying, well, why don't we just stop using these textbooks? And so I'm deeply conflicted, because I've got, the researcher joining the conversation and some other books.
Right.
And I'm sort of going, well, what is the value? And what it finally comes down to is that until the field as a whole starts putting in significant resources into the development of new textbooks, like what Rice has done. Rice has done some amazing work in terms of the open access textbooks they're publishing. And the University of Minnesota has done wonderful work. And there's all kinds of great open educational resources that are available out there. But in a lot of cases, some of these textbooks are as good as some of the middle quality commercial textbooks, but they don't seem to be as good as the best stuff that's out there yet. And I think what we need to be thinking about is, how do we get over that hump? Can we begin to provide the kind of content that's useful to our students and teachers at a reasonable cost, basically free, to accomplish some of those goals? And what I found is that you can take a look at one of my textbooks that probably, in terms of staff time and the reviews and all the rest of all the work that they did with design and everything else, probably put $250,000 into that textbook just in terms of developing it. I don't know very many open access projects beyond what Rice is doing that is putting that kind of money into it. Usually, you've got you're paying $5,000 or $10,000 to a faculty member to develop a textbook, an open access textbook that then can then be used. But so I worry about quality. I worry about issues like that, and I'm thinking, will the open access textbooks, things like Joe Moxley is doing with Writing Commons, will they begin to approach the quality and the ease of use and really the intellectual rigor of some of the work that's coming out from people in the field? So I find that really intriguing. There's a cost formula in there. If you really want to get a great textbook put together, it still costs money in terms of time. And are faculty going to be willing to put in the development efforts that somebody at Bedford St. Martin's puts into it? For example, you've got, when I'm working on a new book with them, we have 1 or 2 development editors. There's all these other people involved in the mix, really experienced people giving ideas about what you might want to do. How can we set up that same situation and make it possible to do that in an open access setting? And so we had an article that came out in 4Cs about a year ago, in which we talked about reward structures and how we build that kind of support or recognition for that kind of support work into the tenure and promotion decisions. And until we as a field start to change these ideas, I don't think that we're going to get there. We're going to have maybe republication publications or repurposing of work that's no longer under copyright by the publishers. We're going to have lots of new, exciting work coming out, but maybe it's not going to be quite as good as it would be if we had the support structures and the recognition for reward structures in place. So I think those are going to be big issues.